Hi, Karen. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
All well, all well. I hope it stays well. So yeah.
Your days are
uh,
long. I am.
Karen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm in San Francisco. I am a recovering lawyer. Just started a new consulting company that's really dedicated to helping leadership and organizations bring technology policy into practice when it comes to managing these really kind of sophisticated technologies like AI. So making that transition now from the practice of law to the practice of governance.
And I want everybody to know that when it comes to technology governance, Karen is the person to go. I have no doubt about it. And I want all our viewers, all our listeners, our friends, and to know that if there is a recommendation that Alberto makes, which we all know that he does very little, I want to know that Karen is one of them in governance. Thank you.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you. And delighted to be here.
So let's jump to our theme here. We would need a one-word command or the first input for an artificial general intelligence, which would also be one of the first principles or the code of ethics the artificial general intelligence would follow. So what is your command or input going to be?
My one word is integrity.
Wow. So why would you say integrity?
So I think there's a lot of talk about bringing trust into these systems and responsibility and ethics and even governance as the word we've also been talking about. But I think you don't have any of that if you don't start with integrity, right? So it's got this sort of architectural, structural piece, and it also has obviously a very strong kind of ethical, moral component. And so I think it's the concept that sits in front of all these other words that we're using to describe systems, and they really are systems. And that's one of the sort of key learnings that I've had over the last couple of years, is that the technology is a big piece of it, but it's really the people, it's how it's interacting with the people around it. Even when you're talking about AGI, I think the interactions and the integrity of those interactions is going to be very important for a very, very long time.
Now, from a governance point of view on the technology, you have dealt with that word integrity, of course. And as we were talking before the podcast, one thing is when it's in a piece of paper, as we former attorneys, as I used to call myself, used to say, paper take anything. But as we were talking before, how it filters into a corporate culture so that it's real. So if using the word integrity, what maybe other words, phrases, or experiences that you have had in the implementation of that word integrity?
So that's a really good question. I think so I was a lawyer for 30 years in a business counseling practice, right? It was a very applied legal field. I was an antitrust lawyer doing mostly M&A, and also a lot of business advising around, distribution and pricing and things like that. And in the course of that work, one of the things you learn is that if the business won't do it, or it isn't relevant to the culture, it doesn't resonate, you can teach and teach and teach and train and train and train, and you're still going to have problems, or you're going to have the bigger problems as opposed to the smaller problems. You're always going to have problems. Okay. But and the technology governance isn't that different, in the sense that, and where integrity comes in one way is that you need a good system on paper. On the other is that needs to translate, I think, to practice in ways that are consistent with the organization, meaning that you've incentivized your teams to follow the rules and the culture that you're setting up. Because if the incentives are at cross purposes with your rules, you're not going to get your rules observed, right? And that you're continuously looking at and iterating on, and this is particularly important with AI, that you have some way to monitor progress and lack of progress, where things have jumped the rails, where things are working better than you expect. And so that requires amount of articulation also, right, around those rules. It's a combination of paper and practice.
So let me see. If my words, not your words, let's see if I understand correctly. Integrity.
Yeah.
You need the documentation, the paperwork, we know that, but we need training, but also besides the training, we need a feedback loop to see if this is working, what the Japanese call kaizen.
Yeah.
And you know, the methodology of improving. In your experience with the word integrity, what do you think is the biggest struggle that the majority, not let's not give it a percentage, but a majority of the folks that you have dealt with in the technology field have problem with? So we had the training and we had the feedback loop.
I think that the biggest problem is that it's not that hard to paint a picture that has coherence and integrity and is complete. But as soon as it encounters the real world, things that you don't expect happen, people behave in ways that are surprising, technology behaves in ways that are surprising, or conflicts come up that either weren't anticipated or were anticipated at a different time. So people are sort of thrown into situations that need to be resolved quickly. And one of the biggest problems is reactiveness. I mean, I think a really robust system is flexible and leaves time for taking 3 breaths and charting the right course. And I think it's really important to have a variety of voices at the table. And I mean that in terms of the sort of current understanding of diversity and inclusion. And in technology, that's just so critical. But also a diversity of expertise, right? So and it's not even just having engineers and non-engineers, it's different kinds of engineers and different kinds of managers. And if you have the right kind of team and the process that allows people to participate and iterate, it actually sounds like it takes more time than it does. Once you have a system up, that actually is a really efficient way forward, because you're not blind. You can see much more.
Okay,
right?
Let's start from there. Yeah, let's start from there. You need to build a team in which integrity is going to be at the core of it. And by the way, think about this. Think about your own integrity, both professionally and personal. And now think, but you're a member of the team. How many of the team will have similar views than you? And what percentage that 10 people in the team will have a different view? Not that they're wrong, it's just a different view.
So this is the tension between different views and consensus, right? I don't know that there's a proportion, but if you have a process for getting, I think, listen, if you can achieve consensus, that's great after discussion. I think you still need leadership that's willing to make decisions after taking lots of diverse input, right? In order to move forward in any sort of practical way. And often that's by committee in one form or another, but by integrity, I mean both what we would think about as the, is somebody's moral structure and fiber, and will they do what they say they're going to do, and those sorts of things. But also I just mean the soundness. I mean, have you built a strong team? Have you built a team that has, that
rhythm of working together?
Right, structure, circulation, some liveliness to it. And some of that liveliness, I think, if it's not disagreement, it may be differences of perspective, and that's going to create a much more robust structure with much more sort of integrity, right? And then when you move forward, your culture can reflect that in a much more specific way. And I know we're using very abstract words, but this is, in practice, I think this isn't as hard as it seems, because we apply these sorts of judgments all the time. I mean, every day, and humans do them for themselves and for their families, hourly.
Well, we're not going to let you get away with not giving us a proportion. So we're going to simplify the equation. There is only two people. You are one in the governance, integrity, AI. Remember, this is your AI. So you define it whichever way you want to. It's personal to you. But because you have a client, or for another reason, you say, I want to include another person that have a diverse opinion than mine in integrity, not wrong. Right and wrong is a different thing. Integrity is, as you well have explained it, actually, it's not an abstract, it's the actual actions that you take, and so I'm going to give you another shot at this percentage. So, and I even 80-20, 50-50, 95-5, and you are the 95 or the 80 or the 51.
Oh, I think in some way, shape, or form, it's closer to 100%, right? Because everybody brings, even if somebody looks just like me, they've got different lived experience, and they bring, the question is, do I set up a system that permits them to bring that experience into the conversation, or do I set up a system where I don't want to hear anything that is in conflict with me, right? So I think it's closer to 100%.
I'd like to add one more small sentence.
But I'm not suggesting that everything runs like, the UN, right? Because then you back to my friends at the UN, but it's just a slower process, and if we're working at the speed of business or government implementation, you need leadership, and that's why I've been really focusing also on the leadership cohort, because that's going to matter very much in terms of the implementations.
So to sum up a little bit of whatever we have spoken till now, like when we have a diverse group of people in one room, we need one adjudicator to kind of keep everything right and in rhythm. And also, difference of opinion is one of the best ways to go ahead, in a way, because then we have two different ways of learning, right? Suppose person A has one view about something and the person B has another view about something. Then we have two different ways to look at things. How better can it get?
So here's the way I think of it. So the only adjustment I'd make is that it's a difference of opinion is an assumption. We might have the same opinion, but get there for a different reason, right? But that's valuable information about how somebody arrived at that place, even if it's the same place or very close to where I was, right? And so I look at it as I have two eyes and one life. If I can bring more people in with more eyes and more life and experience, that we can learn a little bit more, and we'll have more robustness. Now, is that how how in my family we order dinner every night? No, like somebody has to just go order dinner every night. But it's understanding that variety of interests and that variety of warnings and interpretations means that whatever we go out with has a lot more foundation and has more allies and has more chance of avoiding, the known disasters that I just didn't know about, but the guy sitting next to me did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, integrity, inclusiveness of thoughts, and diversity of opinion, and the cherry on top is leadership of everything that you have said, which is not necessarily, Rupesh, excuse me, it's not an adjudicator. I have a feeling that the leadership is not an adjudicator.
No, it is one of the things the leader has to do. That's what
it's a consensus builder. And a person who can push a vision. I couldn't
and
think
where
about.
there needs to be adjudication, someone who's willing to step in and explain how they arrived at what they arrived at. So that's
Exactly.
how you resolve this is a sort of a different question and very specific to any organization. But the idea of collecting it is the idea.
You know, over the years, I have had people ask me about governance, and I have been involved in a lot of those projects, of course. And I want to say that if somebody asked me right now, who would I recommend? Because understands the concept of governance in depth and why too, it is our guest. And I repeat, if you're gonna call me or gonna send me a text or a communication about governance, I'm going to refer you to our guests. That's what I'm going to do from now on. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed speaking with both of you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was great having you on the podcast.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.